Hey, my friends, welcome back. Per usual, thank you for joining me for another episode of Behind Them Walls with your girl, Anna B. I wanted to shout out and start shouting out all of my friends that make requests for videos and states. So here you see our friends on the screen who have dropped their request in previous videos requesting this video here. So I'm not going to hold you up any longer. Let's get into it. We are looking at women serving life in the state of New York. October 18th, 2006, around 11 p.m., Tiia Taylor from Stapleton was speeding down Forest Avenue in Marinas Harbor near Samuel Place when the vehicle she was driving struck and killed a popular Staten Island attorney, Mr. Larry Simon. Mr. Simon was struck so hard, his legs were severed and his body was sent flying 300 feet. This was a random murder, no different from someone randomly shooting someone with a gun on the street, commented District Attorney at the time, Dan Donovan. Prosecutors said Tiia had taken ecstasy, smoked marijuana, and drank beer before slamming into Mr. Simon. She was driving more than 80 miles per hour in the oncoming traffic lane with her headlights off and had blown through a red light, sideswiping a car, carrying a couple inside before crashing. Taylor was naked and told police she was driving as fast as the car would take her and to the light with her dad. Her dad was deceased. Her defense attorney tried arguing that Tiia suffered a schizophrenic attack when she plowed into Mr. Simon, maintaining that the statement of driving to the light showed her mental instability. However, during trial, recorded jailhouse conversations Tiia made from Rikers Island surfaced where Tiia made mention to knowing how to get around the doctors. She also said she had spit out her prescribed psychiatric medicine and could be released in a year from a mental institution if she was found not guilty by reason of insanity. With the revelation of the recorded jail calls, her defense attorney thought the insanity defense had been damaged and thought his best route was to use the intoxication defense, that Tiia was so debilitated by liquor and drugs that she was incapable of forming the mental state of depraved indifference. In 2008, a jury rejected the defense's argument, found Tiia guilty of depraved indifference, second-degree murder, first-degree reckless endangerment, and driving while intoxicated. She was sentenced to 22 1/3 years to life in prison. The state's highest court upheld her murder conviction in 2013. Tiia has been incarcerated since November 19th, 2008. She is currently at the Taconic Correctional Facility in Bedford, New York. Her earliest release date shows February 15th of 2029. That is per New York Department of Correction records. Mr. Larry Simon was a well-respected lawyer who worked as an assistant district attorney on Staten Island before becoming a public defender, a husband, a father, and a dedicated public servant. A truly genuine person, many commented. His family wants him to be remembered for his energetic life and not the last few minutes that took him from this world. May Mr. Larry Simon rest in peace. Diana Nadell desired a life of luxury without the effort it required. Instead of working for it, she devised a plan to kill Peggy Nadell, an 80-year-old community activist and the grandmother of her two youngest children. Diana offered Andrea Benson from Washington, D.C., $10,000 to carry out the murder, hoping to claim a part of Peggy's multi-million-dollar estate. This was despite the fact that Peggy was already providing Diana with substantial financial support each month, covering various expenses. Diana, originally from Jamaica, was married to Peggy's son for 18 years, and together they had two children. The family lived in Florida, where her husband worked as a neuropsychologist. Although he was not implicated in the case, he continued to support Diana even after her arrest. Diana flew from her Florida home to Washington, D.C., where she met up with Andrea Benson. Andrea was there to pick up Diana when she arrived, but it was her mother who was supposed to pick her up, actually. The two women then drove to Valley Cottage on the night of January 24th, 2014. Diana called Miss Peggy early the following morning from a disposable cell phone. With no reason to deny entry, Peggy let her daughter-in-law and Andrea enter her home on Andover Road. Andrea grabbed Miss Peggy from behind, choking her and dragging her downstairs. Andrea said Diana then hit Miss Peggy with an object and stabbed her to death. Peggy's daughter, Suzanne, found her mother's body hours after she was killed. The investigation took months and involved thousands of taped conversations and surveillance footage. Detectives were able to solve Peggy's murder by tracing the prepaid phone call to Florida, where Diana lived. Diana entered a guilty plea on March 6, 2015, in exchange for an agreed-upon sentence of 23 years to life for first-degree murder. But wait, it doesn't stop there. While Diana was being held in the Orange County Jail on first-degree murder charges, she asked a fellow inmate, who she believed was being deported to Jamaica, to arrange the murder of two witnesses in her case. One being from Florida, her friend, who purchased the prepaid track phone Diana used to call her mother-in-law. The other was Tanisha Joyner, who detectives said provided Diana with a false alibi. Diana also pled to attempted tampering with a witness. She received a concurrent 5 to 15 years in jail. She'll become parole eligible in 2037. Andrea Benson, a mother of one child who got involved with Diana for what seemed like, to her, easy money, received a 20-year-to-life sentence for her role. She will become eligible for parole in 2034. Alicia Grant and Tanisha Joyner, witnesses that both pled guilty to second-degree hindering prosecution. They each spent a month in jail before they agreed to cooperate with Clarkstown Police and Rockland District Attorney. Neither received prison time for their convictions. Both Diana and Andrea are housed at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility. My condolences to Miss Peggy Nadell's children, grandchildren, and all that knew and loved her. May she rest in peace. Deranged and calculated, Ashley Wade was indicted on murder, kidnapping, and criminal possession of a weapon from her hospital bed in December of 2015 after she lured Angelica Sutton to her apartment, brutally attacked, killed, and ripped her baby girl from her womb inside Ashley's Wakefield apartment. Ashley told police that she stabbed Angelica in the neck during an argument, then cut open her stomach to save the newborn baby. The baby girl survived. Sources say Ashley was obsessed with babies and had told her boyfriend as well as neighbors that she was pregnant, taking sonogram photos from the internet and sending them to her boyfriend, claiming they were hers. Ashley was never pregnant. A police officer who discovered the horrific scene and body of Mrs. Sutton said it left a mark on his soul. Ashley and Angelica were childhood friends who had reconnected on Facebook. The fact that Ashley took this case to trial regardless of how depressed or stressed she was, to me, is another slap in the face the Sutton family. Having her father take the stand, her family having to sit through testimony and seeing evidence that was so gruesome one juror fainted, having to be transported by ambulance to the hospital, causing the trial to be stopped for the remainder of the day. She could have least, in my opinion, pleaded guilty and taken responsibility for her actions. But instead, she cries at her sentencing and claims she wished she knew why she did this. Have a look at it for yourself.
Some kind of closure?
Yes, we did. We did.
we got justice.
Bishop Sutton forces a smile outside the Bronx courthouse minutes after a judge sentenced his pregnant daughter's killer to prison.
On the day Angelica Sutton, 8.5 months pregnant, was to be married, the defendant viciously stabbed her to death and then methodically excised Angelica's uterus from her body, carefully cut the baby out of the uterus, leaving Angelica to bleed to death.
A jury convicted 23-year-old Ashley Wade of the November 2015 murder of Angelica Sutton and the kidnapping of her unborn baby, who police say Wade passed off as her own child until her arrest.
I'm sorry for hurting so many people. I wish I knew why. I wish I understood it, and I don't, and I tried so hard. I'm so sorry.
If someone had ever caught the fact that she was suffering from terrible depression, that she had terrible issues going on, maybe none of this would happen.
But the judge was not moved, citing testimony that confirmed Wade's extensive and sinister planning to murder Sutton and cut her baby out of her body without harming the child.
In those days of planning, in those moments of slaying Angelica and stealing her baby, she did in fact in those moments become a monster.
The beautiful, happy baby girl in the courtroom today, surrounded by the family of a mother she will never come to know.
She will inevitably know that the day of her birth, a day that should be one of celebration of her life for all her years ahead, will be forever tainted because she was born through the violent death of the mother that she will never know.
Judge Clancy sentenced Wade to 25 years to life for murder and 15 years for kidnapping. Those sentences will be served consecutively, meaning she will spend at least 40 years in prison.
Ashley will not be eligible for parole until 2053. She's housed at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility as well. And I'm quite sure baby Genesis has continued to be surrounded by love and support of her family, who continue to share the memories of her beautiful mother with her. Rest in peace to Angelica Sutton. The 2005 stabbing death of 50-year-old Latifa Lewis went cold for 12 years. That is until her 40-year-old daughter, LaShawn Lewis, was arrested and charged with her murder. Latifa was stabbed more than 40 times in her home, which was located at 97 Orange Street in Buffalo. On August 4th, 2005, a mailman was alarmed by LaShawn after she ran out of her mother's home, covered in blood, screaming and crying out. It was a bloody scene. Latifa was stabbed throughout her body. LaShawn was a suspect, but the case went cold. That was until prosecutors and Buffalo police cold case officers reviewed the evidence in the case. Erie County District Attorney John Flynn says the stabbing followed an argument. LaShawn was already in custody on an unrelated drug charge at the time of the indictment. LaShawn pled not guilty and took her case to trial, but she was found guilty of second-degree murder. Here's footage of her sentencing, and you will not believe how she responded.
A Buffalo woman clearly not happy to learn her fate. A judge sentenced LaShawn Lewis this morning to 25 years to life in prison for murdering her mom 13 years ago. News 4's Katie Alexander was in the courtroom and explains what happened.
LaShawn Lewis received the maximum sentence for stabbing her mother to death in 2005, something she says she didn't do.
She was my best friend. She was my strength. There's no way on earth that I could have taken her life.
A jury disagreed. Lewis was convicted of second-degree murder in September in a retrial after a hung jury in July. She was arrested last November when cold case investigators were able to connect the dots in the case.
You know, the problem was that it was all circumstantial evidence. It was a tough case. And my office, I was willing to take a tough case on.
The accusations that LaShawn Lewis stabbed her mother, Latifa Lewis, 40 times at her home on Orange Street divided her family at her arraignment last year. The fireworks continued in the courtroom for Lewis's sentencing,
You lied.
with Lewis frequently interrupting the family friend who delivered a victim impact statement.
She got her GED, she went and got her job, she made her life the best she could, and she was at a point in her life where she felt that it was time for her to enjoy.
You didn't even know my mother. How could you say these things?
State Supreme Court Justice Christopher Burns said the jury reached a fair verdict in this case and sentenced Lewis to 25 years to life. As she was being taken out of the courtroom, she spit into the gallery. Latifa Lewis's family and friends said they were not surprised by LaShawn Lewis's behavior, calling her, quote, a nasty person. Her daughter-in-law says after 13 years, the sentencing brings her some closure.
A little bit, but I wish I had my mother back.
Lewis has 30 days to appeal her sentence, but the district attorney says he's confident the right person is heading to prison for this crime. He says he hopes she spends the rest of her life there.
LaShawn will not be eligible for parole until 2042. Rest in peace to Latifa Lewis. Brenda Newerk pleaded guilty in May of 2013 to second-degree murder in the death of her boyfriend, 42-year-old Henry Davis Jr. He was killed during a fight at the couple's home on Egypt Road in Conquest on October 28th of 2012. Before his death, Henry called 911 around 5:55 p.m. to report he and Brenda were having an argument, adding that he had been assaulted by Brenda earlier in the dispute, but it was not physical at the moment. The 911 dispatcher stayed on the phone while two deputies responded. The dispatcher spoke to both Brenda and Henry, telling them to stay separated while waiting for deputies to arrive. At 6:02 p.m., the dispatcher lost the phone call. At 6:12 p.m., Brenda called 911 to say she had shot Henry. When deputies arrived at 6:26 p.m., Brenda was taken into custody, and deputies then found Henry deceased. Before Brenda was sentenced in 2013, she tried unsuccessfully to withdraw her guilty plea. Her rights to an appeal were also waived when she entered her guilty plea. Brenda was sentenced to 21 years to life and is serving her sentence out at the Bedford Hills Correctional Facility for Women, along with the other women discussed on this video. Her earliest release date would be October of 2033, if she is granted parole at her first appearance before the board. Rest in peace to Mr. Henry Davis Jr. Five shots went off after 1 a.m. March 15, 2022, at the Swifty Tavern on Perrine Street in Auburn. Prosecutors said the first 5 shots came from a third person charged in the incident, Janelle Copes, a relative of Shamik Copes. He was in a car outside the bar at the time, calling him the catalyst for what took place that early morning. Video footage evidence was also presented from Swifty's security camera that showed Shamik going into the bathroom with a person who testified he gave her his gun. Footage then showed her coming out of the front entrance of the tavern, turning left just before James, visible in a window to the left, falls down. 3 shots can be heard as that is happening. A zoomed in still frame from a video camera positioned above the exterior of the front door also shows a gun being held by an arm with visible tattoos that appears to match Shamik's arm. About 1:40 a.m., officers were called to Swifty's Tavern after gunshots were reported in the area. 37-year-old John Wesley Smith III was found on the ground outside the bar with a gunshot wound, and he was pronounced dead at the scene. Shamik initially was just a person of interest. Days later, she was declared a suspect after Auburn authorities received multiple tips. They knew she had ties to Atlanta, Houston, and the Carolinas. She eventually turned herself in late March at the Rock Hill Police Department in Rock Hill, South Carolina, after an arrest warrant accusing her of second-degree murder was issued in Cuyahoga County on March 28, 2022. The following year, Shamik was convicted of second-degree murder and criminal possession of a weapon in the second degree. She received the maximum sentence of 25 years to life in prison. She entered Bedford Hills May 1st, 2023. Her parole interview date shows sometime in November of 2046. If granted, she could be released March the following year. Adrian Agee of Auburn was charged with 2 counts of first-degree hindering prosecution and 1 count of tampering with physical evidence. Janelle Copes received 5 years for attempted criminal possession of a weapon in the second degree. Adrian received 3 to 5 years for hindering prosecution first degree and criminal possession of a weapon second degree. Condolences out to John's family and friends and loved ones, and may his soul rest in peace. On March 11, 2022, police responded to Jim Lee's Flushing Law Office in response to a disturbance call. Chow Ning Zhang, 25 years old, was demanding that Mr. Lee also work to have a photo of her at a protest in front of the United Nations removed from the internet. Mr. Lee told her he would not do that, and she became enraged. She also told Mr. Lee that she had lied on her asylum application about being sexually assaulted by Beijing police in China. In response, Mr. Lee told her he would not be representing her moving forward in her immigration case. She was told to leave but refused. She reacted by putting her hands around Mr. Lee's neck and choking him. Police were called and escorted her from the building and told her not to return. 3 days later, on March 14th, 2022, Chow Ning went back to Mr. Lee's law office. This time she was armed with a paring knife and a larger kitchen knife. Chow Ning confronted Mr. Lee and suddenly started stabbing him in his chest and his neck. An office worker was able to restrain her until police arrived. Mr. Lee was taken to an area hospital where he was pronounced deceased. Chow Ning Zhang was found guilty by a jury of murder in the second degree, criminal possession of a weapon in the fourth degree, menacing in third degree, criminal obstruction of breathing or blood circulation and harassment in the second degree. Queen Supreme Court Justice Kenneth C. Holder sentenced her to 25 years to life in prison. Mr. Jim Lee was 66 years old, an immigrant lawyer, an activist in China, and a well-regarded immigration attorney representing individuals seeking political asylum. He worked pro bono for many human rights cases in the United States. His friends and loved ones will remember him as being generous and kind. May he rest in peace.
Thank you.